Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, author of Chorus of 1,000, available now on Amazon. And today we are talking about Lord Fowl's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson. This is the first book in Donaldson's first Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. It was I think when it was just a trilogy, this was originally called The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. I don't know if that's still the official full title of this trilogy. It is a trilogy, but it is now expanded. So we have this trilogy, the first Chronicles, which is Lord Fowl's Bane, the Ill Earth War, and the Power That Preserves. Then we have the second Chronicles. I don't remember the names of those books. That's another trilogy, 4, 5, and 6. And then there is the series called The Last Chronicles, which is a tetralogy, so 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 total books for this whole big epic story. Now, this was a series I had been meaning to read forever, and had, for one reason or another, just passed on it. I don't know, there were simply other series that caught my eye. Now, this series is notable, I think, for the time that it came out. First of all, it came out in 1977. Now, 1977 was a very interesting year for fantasy. Prior to that point, obviously Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth world was extremely popular, as it still is today. But there weren't a lot of proper series that could kind of step into the fore as potential successors or new upcoming names until the year of 77. And it was primarily for two series: Chronicles of Thomas Covenant and The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. Of course, The Sword of Shannara is, and still is to this day, I think, maybe the criticism of it has lessened in recent years. But it was, for the most part, kind of, it was loved for, its strengths, that it was a good, fun story, but it poached a lot of elements of Tolkien, almost like a one-for-one copy-paste. I will admit, I have not read Sword of Shannara yet, so I can't speak to the similarities, the differences, if it is just a copy-paste story or if it's enough of its own. Granted, Terry Brooks admits, in interviews I've seen with him, he admits totally to being inspired heavily by Lord of the Rings, and excuse me, that he hadn't really come into his own as a writer yet. And so then in following years and books, then he was able to develop his own style and get away from a lot of those influences, make something his own. And then there's this series. Now, I can't point to a source or an interview that Donaldson directly states this, but it seems like Donaldson created this as an answer to The Lord of the Rings, but something that was more, I mean, you say realism, but you're talking about a fantasy series, so, but something that was with a little more bite and edge, but not in like a, edgy for edgy sake. Something that was very gray, very complex, not so good and evil, cut and dry. And in every respect, I think, and this series is the forerunner for epic fantasy as we know and understand it today, especially grimdark fantasy and all the various subgenres and whatever that come out of that. But this is kind of, it's kind of like that common ancestor for all of those various subgenres, in addition to the Lord of the Rings. This does borrow a lot of general elements kind of in the quest and the journey from Lord of the Rings, particularly in the Fellowship of the Ring, which I'll get into here in a little bit. but it also borrows some, borrow, I say borrow, but I don't mean a one for one. It takes elements and twists them a little to Donaldson's credit. Now, this novel is a portal fantasy, first and foremost. You have the protagonist of Thomas Covenant. He is a man in our world, or the world of late 70s United States. He is a broken man in every sense of the word, physically, mentally, the way he interacts with others, but that stems from the fact that he has leprosy. Even in the modern age, he has leprosy. And even though it is not necessarily you can't transmit the disease, you cannot spread it to others, he is looked at as an outcast. People avoid him. I think because leprosy is and still to this day, leprosy is one of those diseases that somebody gets it and they're cast out. Because it's such a and what the disease has done to Covenant is that it has frayed his nerve endings, so he cannot feel, which means and of course with any injury regarding the nerves, it could be if you have a spinal cord injury, if you have paralysis, and you damage those nerves, and you can't feel things, that is for obvious reasons, that's concerning, alarming, but it is a persistent issue because, you can learn to live with not being able to feel, whether it be a limb or whatever, but at the same time, you have to be diligent with checking yourself. It could be sores, it could be injuries. You might, I think, with the frayed nerve endings, I don't know this for sure, and it's explored a little bit, but with leprosy, if you're a little more prone to bruising, to injuries, if you kind of hit your arm on something or bump your head in this or whatever. So it's called VSE is what is constantly referred to. It's just kind of a visual check of your body, of your extremities. Checking to make sure there's no cuts, there's no scrapes, there's no bruising, because it can get infected super easily. And because he can't feel pain, if we can feel pain, obviously we have a natural reaction. We know, oh, I feel pain, so therefore I can get this checked out. But if you can't feel pain and you don't check for it, you might not realize, oh, I've injured myself and it's starting to get infected. But again, he has such a dim view of himself. Becoming not only is he a leper, but his wife leaves him and takes his infant son away. And of course, to anybody, it's devastating. He's in such a devastating place in his life until one day when he's going into town to pay a bill, he's hit by a car. And in being hit by a car, he is transported to a place that is known simply as the Land. He is picked up by a character named Lena, who thinks that he is the reincarnation of this legendary figure for many people in the land called Barrack Halfhand. Because he is missing a couple, from the leprosy, he's missing a couple fingers on his right hand. And another kind of piece in to illustrate the danger that Covenant might pose to this land. He has the power to save it and the power to damn it. Because even though he's essentially been separated from his wife, gotten a divorce, whatever, he still wears his wedding ring, his wedding band, and it is a band of white gold, which is that is a property, an element that does not exist in the land. And there's a prophecy that somebody will return, whether it's Barrack Halfhand or somebody with his injuries will return. An outsider will come to the land bearing white gold, and that person has the power to save the land or damn it. Now, before he kind of comes to in this area known as Kevin's Watch, he is tormented by Lord Drool and then by Lord Fowl. Fowl being kind of this amorphous evil deity, and Lord Drool kind of being this cave white creature who has obtained the staff of law and his power, and Lord Fowl tells him, I need to use you. But Fowl has to essentially set Covenant on this quest to go to this place called Revelstone to talk to these lords and say to them, in this amount of time, Lord Fowl will damn the earth. Lord Drool has the staff of law. He's trying to get the Ill Earth Stone. You have to stop him. Knowing that Fowl has to set in motion something that, like Covenant's white gold, could save or damn. It could help Lord Fowl or it could damn him, but it's something that he has to set in motion regardless, which is interesting. Now, again, Covenant thinks that he is in a dream, as I think would most people. If we all of a sudden were plucked from our world and dropped into a fantasy land, especially as we get hit by a car, we would think, oh, I'm in a weird unconscious state. I'm just dreaming this. He thinks he's dreaming. But I think when Covenant is met with empathy, sympathy just in general, but when he is met by kindness, he reacts. He shrivels away from it. He becomes angry. He becomes volatile and violent because he thinks, A, he's in a dream. This can't be real. Nothing I do in this realm has any consequence, so I can do whatever I want, which does that. It has a brutal scene where that comes to light, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But that nothing I do in this world has any consequence, and these people, like, they don't understand I'm a leper. I'm a leper. Like, why are they treating me like this? Why are they treating me with decency? Why? And then it's the whole idea of this prophecy, and I'm not this guy. I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm not a good person. I'm not this, that, and the other. He's none of those things. That's what he says. That's what he says to himself. It's constant outer dialogue with these characters and inner dialogue with himself. A very brutal twisting and pulling of a conflict within him. He is objectively, internally and externally, a terrible person. Terrible person. He is, in one hand, insensitive. He has violent tendencies. But it's, can this person, can somebody that is so bereft of empathy, bereft of kindness, of love, who is at such a low point in his life, could somebody like that actually be a hero? It makes sense that somebody like that could have the power to damn or to save. He has both. And there is a scene in this book, and I will get into it. I was thinking about kind of dancing around it, but you can't. You can't when you talk about this book, and I need to address it. Because it is a scene that, for many people who try to read this book, as I gather online, there's a scene that happens that people will get to it, they will read it, and they will put the book down, and they will say, I don't need any more. Just not for me. Which is totally 100% understandable. Now, that scene, it happens around a fifth of the way through the book. Thomas Covenant, and again, I won't describe it in great detail, but it is a graphic, horrific scene. Covenant rapes a teenage girl who, up to that point, helped him, clothed him, fed him, brought him to her family to help him, and he rapes her. Now, again, totally understandable that somebody will get to that point and they will be like, no, I can't. I understand that. It should be noted, for those of you who have not read it yet, that Donaldson, in displaying this, in allowing his protagonist to do something that is so despicable, violent, brutal, heinous, disgusting, that he does not condone it or approve of it in any fashion. And most importantly, he does not drop it. It is not something that is there for mere shock value and that we never return to it again. That is a moment where we see the lows that somebody like Covenant can sink to. somebody with such bile within him, that is, again, to save the world or damn it. He is capable of some very heinous things, despicable things. And what is even more, I guess, heartbreaking, and what adds to this complexity, is that the girl, her mother, Atiaran, goes with Covenant, knowing, I mean, she eventually finds out of what he has done to her daughter. But she says, I know this man can save or damn us. I want to kill him, but I cannot. Because there's an oath of peace that a lot of people within this land swear, in which they are stewards of this land. They will not kill. That's such a terrible complexity, but it is an intriguing one. But again, this is not, it is an act that is not dropped. It is an act in which we see the conflict and horror within her mother when she finds out about it, and within Covenant as he returns to it in flashes of despair and agony throughout the story. Why did I do this? How could I have done this? I didn't know I was capable of doing such a terrible thing. But he realizes it. And he understands, ultimately, that he can never, and I'm sorry if this is spoiling some things, but he understands that he can never make amends for it. It is an unforgivable thing that he has done. And he has to own that. And it gnaws at him. It does. It gets to that point where it gnaws at him. He dismisses it at first by thinking that he dreamt that he did that thing, but then he realizes, no, this was something I actually did, an act that I committed. So again, if you get to that point, I can totally, it's, everybody can do what they want. They can put down the book if they want, if they get to that point. But it is something that needs to be addressed, because that's something that happens pretty early on in this book. And yeah, but it adds to, how do I want to word this carefully? It, by not being dropped, it allows for the pain within Covenant to grow. And because he is able to then recognize the terribleness of his actions, it adds to the changing way in which he views himself and views the world, and views the kind of the imperative of empathy, the imperative of that stewardship, that love, that kindness. I mean, if you want to call it that he's able to have a moment of clarity by realizing the terrible things that he has done, which is, in terms of Donaldson trying to create a very gray protagonist, that's at its crux. A character who can damn and save, a character who can do these very heinous, despicable things, and grow to a point where he can have a moment of reflection. But then the pain of it, ironically, because again, he can feel pain now, and pain in general is the theme throughout all of this. But that he can get to a point and realize the pain that he has caused, but then he's still a figure in this prophecy who's done terrible things. He's done terrible things, but he is a prophecy, a guy who could save the world, but who can, and that's where, in that layer of complexity is crucial. And I think it was, having Covenant just in general being this type of character that is despicable, but could ultimately redeem everyone, not just himself, but the whole world, it was crucial, I think, to the development of modern fantasy. I don't know if we would have gotten to this point without just the character of Covenant. Again, you could argue that, should he have included certain scenes? Should he have had Covenant do things he did? That there's definite debate for that. But Covenant in general is I think, a crucial protagonist in the genre. Now, where this book falls flat a little bit for me is an issue that I had kind of as I got to the middle of it. Now, Atiaran, the mother of Lena, great character, wonderful character, but she's only in the book for a little bit. And then we are introduced to Salt Heart Foam Follower, who's fantastic. This giant, literally a giant, who's trying to, and all the giant people are trying to find their way home. So he's on this ship, he's trying to find his way home, but he will accompany Covenant. Now, in addition to pain, what comes with pain is a lack of knowledge for the people of the land. Covenant does, they're lore masters within this world, and they lack lore for certain crucial things. They lack a lore to determine what Lord Fowl might do or how they can best Lord Fowl in this grand ultimate conflict. And so there's a lot of back and forth between being a storyteller, between having a story. Stories in general are so crucial to this world, and there are a lot of great interplays between Foam Follower and Covenant. And that's where this story is at its strength, when it has those moments. It can dive in. It's moments of reflection for Covenant, for those around him. Now, it does follow those beats of a traditional fantasy story. So that's, that can be a plus or a negative depending on how you look at it. It's a little, maybe a little bit of a negative for me, just a little. He goes to this place called Revelstone, and Revelstone's kind of like Rivendell, and you have a council, a council there, a great council where they will determine and fit out the members of this grand quest. Now, excuse me, a little bit of a cold. There's an interesting aspect, though, to the council within Thomas Covenant. Now, and the minor spoilers, and I think I might just dredge into spoilers from here on out. So, within this council, when you have these high lords who, they don't even really know what the full intent and purpose of this quest will be. They have some goals. They don't know if they'll reach them. They don't know how they'll get there. It's not as cut and dry as, we will take the ring into Mordor to Mount Doom, and that is the only way it can be unmade. Here it's like, we got to stop Drool. He has the Staff of Law. We should get that back. He might have the Ill-Earth Stone. We should probably get that back too. Oh yeah, and then there's also Covenant's ring. What powers does that have? How can it be used? They don't know, and that's very interesting. And the novel moves, and I think it really starts to come into its own in the last 100 pages or so, as they approach Mount Thunder, or Mount Thunderstone, or Mount Doom, the Mount Doom stand-in. And then with Covenant, with them succeeding and gaining, again, just the second ward, and that's still, there's still, 5 wards remaining. They don't have the knowledge necessary to defeat Lord Fowl. And then Covenant is able to unleash that power, which he does not want to do. Because I think it was a bargain he struck, especially when his heinous actions of earlier in the novel truly come to light for himself. But it's within that battle, kind of in the forest, where this community is destroyed, in which he kind of resolves to not kill again. He does not want to kill because he sees the pain. He sees the pain that his action or inaction or his presence on the quest causes. He does not want to have a hand in that anymore. So Covenant, in this moral choice at the end, is presented with an opportunity. You have to save us. Use your white gold. Grab onto this staff, and you will call down these fire lions from the sky that will help to eviscerate our enemies and then save us. And he says, I don't want to kill. And eventually it takes Banor to kind of, physically put his hand on the staff and then allow for it to happen. And then he's called back to our world. That thing he was needed for, which was to preserve this group so they could escape and get back. And now he's back in our world. Again. He has to live with that now. He's changed. Will it last? I don't know. Will he regress? I don't know. Obviously, there are two more books within this trilogy, so he'll go back. But yeah, I would say at the end of the day, this was a light 4 out of 5. It was kind of, for a lot of it, it was 3 out of 5. I like it's mainly because the conflicts within Covenant, that growth which was bubbling for the whole book started to come about at the way end. So that really helped. But of course, it kind of gets bogged down in the quest section a little bit. It's still able to keep a pretty good pace, but it's just that the whole host of characters and all of them kind of having the same personality, except for Foam Follower, who had an established great personality before. It's not the same. There's so many people on this quest that it's just, you're kind of like, okay, who is that again? Who is that? And they don't have distinct personalities, but of course this is the first book, so room to grow. So Lord Fowl's Bane, I recommend it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this series will go. Lord Fowl's Bane, Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen Donaldson. If you have read it, let me know what you think of it, and as always, I will see you guys next time.